Li Jian's story opens with a giant glowing face announcing it owns the Void's legacy, which is a very normal way to introduce yourself if your hobbies include cosmic theft and yelling at empty space. The thing calls itself the Ancient, and right away the stakes are simple. Whoever controls the Void is not planning to use it for polite community service. The blue-white energy tightens into a vortex, then fires out like somebody weaponized a bad decision. No warning, no negotiation, just raw Void power getting launched because subtlety died before the story started. Then we pull back to two dragon-like beings floating in the dark, born from the same nightmare but clearly not built for the same personality type. One of them, the gold dragon, is said to be brilliantly intelligent, which in this world seems to mean smart enough to become everyone else's problem. Gold stands over the swirling void energy like he found a new toy and nobody can stop him from licking the battery. He laughs, calls down a little meteor, and bro is already treating planetary violence like a party trick. The blue dragon immediately clocks the behavior and flies off with the exhausted energy of someone watching a genius use a flamethrower indoors. Gold may have brains and power, but apparently not one adult in the room. The two dragons clash in mid-air, and the fight becomes exactly what happens when ancient opposites skip therapy and go straight to aerial impact. Their collision blows out energy around them, while Gold reels back in pain, and suddenly the meteor routine looks less cute. Gold retreats, beaten back for now, but the narration makes it clear this was not a sibling disagreement over cave space. These two were opposites from creation, and the instant they made eye contact, conflict started like their entire purpose was to ruin each other's day. Then the rules get uglier. A dragon that loses purity for the elves' sake ends up under purge logic, because ancient politics apparently comes with a garbage disposal setting. Dragons and orcs not tied to the gold dragon get marked for removal, and someone armed is already bringing the policy down onto bodies below. The purge begins. Nice clean title for mass extermination, very tasteful, really lets the genocide breathe. Now we cut to soldiers in a bunker, where one guy is holding up a phone and demanding an answer like the war briefly turned into a dating interview. On the screen is a young woman, and the masked soldier proudly says this is his daughter Jihai. The timing is insane, since they are literally in the middle of an operation briefing. But dad has priorities, and one of them is apparently matchmaking under military lighting. He tells Li Jian that if it is him specifically, he would consider it, which is both a compliment and a trap with family photos attached. Jian stands there in armor, addressed as Sergeant Egan, carrying the dead-eyed posture of a man who has survived monsters, war, and now someone trying to recruit him as a son-in-law. Later, during a night convoy, he asks how many years this war has been going on, like the number might explain why everyone has become this weird. The soldier needles him for still going by the book and tells him to give it a rest, then circles right back to the important battlefield question. Is Jian meeting Jihai or not? Artillery can wait, apparently romance logistics need a straight answer. Jian answers with the emotional warmth of a performance review, telling the man he can shoot fine but is nowhere near A tier, and is basically F. Our boy does not reject the daughter directly, he just grades her father like a defective weapon attachment. The soldier, somehow still alive after that verbal headshot, asks if Jian was special forces or something. Jian does not explain much, he just hands him a small device, which is always comforting in a war zone. Mysterious hardware from the quiet guy. The soldier opens it and finds that besides Jihai's photo, there is also a family picture with her father and a child. That tiny detail lands heavier than the awkward matchmaking, because now this guy is not just annoying in a bunker, he has people waiting for him to come back. Then blue-white magical energy starts spiraling upward, cutting through the night like the battlefield just remembered it was supposed to be catastrophic. Red sparks trail behind it, which is usually the part where everyone with survival instincts stops talking about daughters and ducks. The energy detonates into a massive explosion, white hot at the center and blooming into red-orange devastation. Whatever was happening before is now drowned out by fire, and Li Jian's war has officially upgraded from awkward convoy chat to instant cremation lighting. The glowing projectile keeps tearing across the night like someone fired a problem and forgot to attach instructions. It drops under the moon, sparks dragging behind it, heading straight for somewhere that definitely did not ask to be involved. It streaks through a neon city, then slips into a warped portal where a dragon shape waits below. So the battlefield is not just burning anymore, it is apparently taking interdimensional deliveries now. On the ground, an orc clutching a phone gets the full customer service experience. Humans screaming about filthy orcs and ordering a total slaughter. The poor monster does not even get to finish being offended before someone decides genocide sounds like a tactical plan. Then the rain thickens and a winged shape descends through it with the kind of pressure that makes every soldier suddenly remember religion. Someone calls it the gold dragon, which is useful since the giant golden death lizard was being subtle. The dragon lands hard enough to blast energy across the field, then settles in with its wings folded and its body on full display. Not a rescue, not a warning, just a massive scaled statement that the local property values are finished. Something or someone drops through the air wrapped in magic, and a gold-black clawed hand forms out of the mess. Then a glowing device appears in the night, showing a neat little 000 reading, which is always comforting when the options are countdown, failure, or both. In the rain, Li Jian looks up at a towering structure, soaked, battered, and clearly not enjoying the weather report. Nearby, a covered body lies on the ground, and the silence around it says more than the storm does. He grips a weapon or device close to his face, eyes glowing like bro, is trying to intimidate the object into giving better answers. A moment later, he sits with a hand to his head because Pain has apparently decided to file a formal complaint. The sergeant cuts through the mess with orders. Primary objective is withdrawal and rejoining the main force. Practical, clean, and exactly the kind of thing you say when standing over a body and pretending the mission still has tidy edges. Li Jian stands alone in the rain, scars visible, injuries fresh, looking less like a soldier and more like a man the battlefield kept chewing but failed to swallow. He reaches toward a huge dark armored shape and forces out a broken word, like even speaking costs him. Then he stands over the sheeted body with his fist raised, and whatever discipline was holding him together starts cracking. Our boy is still upright technically, but the look says the retreat order just hit a wall. Far from that rain-soaked grief, the moon hangs over a quieter stretch of night. A small blue creature crawls across the ground, making tiny noises, which is brave for something built like it could lose a fight with a boot. The quiet does not last, since armored orc soldiers start rushing through the area, barking for everyone to move. A massive green orc leader steps in with a weapon, and the whole group barrels forward to help their comrades. Very noble if you ignore the giant murder tools. The blue creature launches upward in a burst of energy, suddenly upgrading from ground snack to flying projectile. Then a tall pale-haired elf with a crown appears, which means the forest has officially called in management. The elf faces the orcs and snarls about vermin chewing away at the beautiful forest, telling them to give up already. Fair complaint honestly though, saying it while armed makes the environmental policy feel very stab forward. Steel and energy collide as the elf and orcs crash into close combat. The crown defender meets the charging brute head on, and the forest dispute immediately becomes less about trees and more about who gets buried under them. The elf unleashes the shot, a surge of energy that hammers into the orc line with zero ceremony. He calls them pathetic while the blast is still traveling, which is either confidence or just efficiency. The spike-armored creature catches a bit of the splash damage, and then the whole clearing lights up white-green, the kind of explosion that makes everyone squint and reconsider their life choices. The orc commander finally reads the room and orders a retreat deeper into the dark forest. The elf announces himself master of every shade of green, then launches another attack, this one glowing purple-pink, because apparently one color scheme wasn't enough. A dragon dominates the field overhead, while soldiers below either scatter or hold their ground, depending on how much they value not being stepped on. The dragon sneers at his opponent, calls him the cheapest of dragonkin, a lowborn and inferior scrap of green molted shell. He's really workshopping the insults here. The dragon goes silent after that little speech, letting the words marinate. Below him, a small green dragonkin is trapped inside a circular magical field, suspended and going nowhere. The golden dragon proclaims himself the rightful opponent, the rightful victor, and offers a backhanded compliment. A fine last speech. Then the golden dragon closes his grasp and the lowborn dragonkin is crushed, consumed, fully absorbed into that grip. The narrator muses about arrogance that transcends time and space, which is poetic but also accurate when you're witnessing a dragon eat someone mid-monologue. Except the golden dragon suddenly has to release the orb, forced by some external power he clearly didn't see coming. He mutters about what he could have had, and the interruption completes, separating him from his meal entirely. Cut to the Northeast Asian front, a military encampment during what looks like a truce or at least a lull in the violence. A creature stands in a sunlit room making clicking sounds. A soldier picks it up, examines it, calls it Yudani. The soldier speaks with determination. Tell them I'm going. He's introduced as Sergeant Li Jian. He enters the trench through a tent opening, already moving. Another soldier reports that a girl from the mountain village showed up, says she's from down the mountain and wants to trade for some food. Li Jian's face shows his reaction, whatever that might be. The girl, soldiers, and the creature move together through the trench. A soldier holds out food containers, telling the sergeant that if it weren't for him, there's no way all of them would have made it this far alive. The girl smiles, holding the food and the creature, a rare moment of something other than dread. Li Jian shouts a warning to the troops. Get in the trench, move, drone incoming. The girl and creature scramble toward cover during the attack, and the brief peace is officially over. The attack hits and the trench instantly turns into organized panic, which is still panic just with ranks. Li Jian and the soldiers snap their heads up as the lieutenant gets screamed for, and then the reason arrives overhead, huge enough to make every order sound late. A clawed hand drops into view with a weapon, followed by a face that looks like it was designed by someone with a personal grudge against sleep. The lieutenant finally gives the only sane command available. Fall back now, preferably before the giant nightmare finishes choosing a target. One soldier plants his rifle and fires anyway. Brave, focused, and about 2 seconds away from learning the difference between courage and ballistics. The shots crack through the air while the rest of the unit bunches up, ears ringing, faces locked somewhere between discipline and asking payroll for hazard pay. A worn-out soldier catches the movement too late, his expression shifting from tired to very awake. The creature is already over a prone soldier with a grenade launcher, and bro on the ground suddenly looks less like backup and more like bait with equipment. The monster's body comes into full view, all alien muscle and ugly organic detail. Then its face twists with enough feeling to prove this thing is not just a weapon. One soldier holds up a glowing egg-like object marked with a number 2, which is a wild thing to bring to a monster fight. But fine, let's see where the military procurement budget went. Then the massive creature fully reveals itself. Aggressive and towering, while someone calls it a body warrior, like that explains why everyone is about to be folded. Lee Gun stands beneath a green glow, looks up and raises his hand as energy starts gathering around his fist, finally choosing violence with presentation value. The clash shifts into something charged and impossible, with Dragon Force and a soldier locked in the same battlefield like the rules got patched mid-fight. Then a system message barges in, cheerfully announcing new features from another world with the big 3, as if this massacre needed a tutorial pop-up. The system asks him to select a breeder, and the dragon frames it very personally. The one who raises it is the chosen hero. Legion moves among dragons under beams of light, so our boy has gone from trench warfare to magical childcare selection without even getting a decent briefing. The system starts listing options, first the blue dragon with cold, sharp wits, then it shifts to the red dragon, dragging out the pitch before landing on fierce momentum, which is a very fancy way to say this one solves problems by ramming them. Legion stands armed and ready while the interface pushes him toward using the new features. The next layer appears too. Power of creation from the dwarf, nobility of reflection from the elf. A menu so overstuffed it sounds less like a skill tree and more like someone spilled fantasy races into a blender. Power starts channeling into him, bright and heavy, wrapping his body in magical energy from the legs up. The guy disappears inside the aura, then steps out transformed, powered up and looking like he finally found a cheat code that does not require dying first. Someone sees the results and immediately loses the plot, blurting out the only honest response left. What the hell? Fair question, since Legion just upgraded in the middle of a battlefield while everyone else was still trying to survive the tutorial monster. Legion sits in front of a whole spread of items like he's picking tools for the most dangerous shopping trip imaginable. Then something snaps in his chest, he lunges for the glowing sword, and suddenly he's in a guarded stance with a grin that says this fight just got a lot less friendly. The blade flares, comes down, and the sergeant cashes in the opening by carving into a goblin with a clean sword strike. A heartbeat later, his hand starts changing shape with power, which is a nice way of saying the battlefield has stopped respecting normal anatomy. Then the slime pulls a full genre switch and turns itself into a weapon, first a shape, then a gun or cannon, like it has no shame at all. The sergeant aims it in with one glowing pink eye, holsters it, and the thing still kicks and fires off recoil like it's annoyed to be used. A blast drops from above and slams into him, forcing a hard brace just to stay upright. The goblin answers by hurling out a mouth-fueled energy burst, shouting its battle cry with an energy bow in hand before the hit knocks somebody flat on the ground. For a second, one side stands over fallen soldiers looking like the winner, then immediately leans into a downward energy strike to keep the pressure on. The goblin gets shoved loose, the two collide in a violent energy trade, and both get thrown airborne like the fight refuses to pick a winner yet. When the dust settles, the soldier is only just coming back to himself while the goblin and dragon lie knocked down, which is an ugly little battlefield rearrangement. Legion levels a handgun with a hard stare and fires, the muzzle flash punching out like a flashbang with a grudge. He then calls up a strange magical creature and immediately judges the weapon's power, firing anyway just to see how bad it is. The verdict is brutal. It hits like rubber bullets, nowhere near enough for real combat, so this miracle comes with a bargain bin warranty. After that, he's sitting indoors among the creatures, staring ahead like he got reassigned to the weirdest break room in history. Legion wonders where he is and what he's supposed to do, reaches for the glowing creature, hears that it's a hero from another world, and watches it start the ritual to bring this body back to life. He asks what they are, aliens or something, and the goblins freeze mid-panic, one stammering out, "Goblet," like it's both a name and a cry for help. Legion picks up one of the glowing creatures, standing there in the cave surrounded by his new squad, face caught between determination and the dawning realization that his life just got infinitely weirder. A goblin throws both fists up and bellows in triumph, then immediately eats it, crashing down in a blur of motion and regret. Our boy sits on a mound watching two more goblins crawl out of holes below him, and he decides it's time for introductions using the universal language of crude stick figure diagrams. A large goblin foot stomps on a drawing labeled ME. Legion's boot follows on another set labeled Legion. Then he gestures at the rest and asks the obvious question, "Where are you guys from?" The goblins cheer back in what might be an answer or just enthusiasm. Nobody's sure. The group stands at the cave mouth, staring out across the landscape, and then something locks onto them. Golden yellow eyes flare close, pupils dilating, predator sharp. Light erupts from a glowing device on the ground, goblins crowding around it as a system notification pops up announcing that one Plank Tribe Goblin Warrior LV5 just tamed another Plank Tribe Goblin Warrior LV3. Legion is already holding his gun, face set, mystical aura flickering around him like the system's trying to figure out what classification he even fits into. Meanwhile, robed figures assemble information elsewhere, and an authority figure commands the young warrior to speak. The report comes in. On the outskirts of the dark forest near a human village, they discovered an oak. The council stands in judgment, one elder's face tightening as he grumbles that in his day kids didn't run around with such reckless ideas. The younger one stands resolute in profile, hand raised to show a magical marking, and the size difference becomes clear. This elder towers over her. He reaches toward her, calls her Celia, then drops the real problem. The green dragon's magic has been erased without a trace. Another figure manifests with a burst of aura and motion, dismissing the whole thing and telling the red-shelled old relic to laugh it off. Celia insists she knows what she saw, it was the green dragon's magic. He then fires back with a sharp question. So an elf who can't shoot a bow isn't worth listening to. Is that it? Celia escalates. If they won't believe her, she'll bring them the heads herself. Then the real venom spills. She'll erase every shadow and footprint of the green lizard that took her arm. One vendetta gift wrapped. Cut to the field, two creatures square off. All aggression and posturing. One coils, motion vertical and tight. Then hoists a vehicle overhead like a trophy. The goblins watching have notes. Crawling meat, nasty meat, very much not their problem. The goblins huddle, admitting they failed, that it was scary. A human kneels, asks the obvious, so you were banished from the pack? Hand on shoulder, the alliance forms. Outcasts find outcasts. Night sky, full moon, then fire erupts from the ground below. A massive explosion shoots debris into the air, the kind that redraws the landscape. Legion rests by a campfire in a cave shelter, moonlight spilling in. He observes the local wildlife. Bear-like guys, giant land crustaceans, the usual threats. He examines glowing creatures in the cave, feeds one a green leaf. They settle near him, small and trusting. His face hardens, determination locking in, then trouble. His hands ignite with fiery dragon energy. The power expands, explosive, then tears through the environment. Gion stands at the center of the inferno, fully exposed. A colorful device materializes in the burning landscape, circular energy symbols spinning. The dragon's face appears close, a teardrop forming. Then the body is swallowed by yellow-white explosions, screaming, the sound stretching and distorting. A soldier screams, mouth open, an armored figure looming in shadow above. The figure clasps hands or braces, the scream warping into something extended and broken. A boot stamps down, crushing whatever was beneath it. The human stands screaming, a small pale creature visible near his shoulder. Two soldiers freeze under moonlight, staring at each other in shock. The military camp at night gathers around the fire, everyone processing what just happened. In the water, a blue creature holds a gun, eyes wide. A human. Here? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. The soldiers are still cursing in the dark, the usual heroic response to seeing something impossible with teeth. Then the thing in the water cuts through the surface like a knife, and Lijian is suddenly up on higher ground, staring straight down at a pair of glowing red eyes that do not care about the mood. The creature answers with a full-throated roar, and the camp turns into a mess of people trying not to get folded in half. It dives, it crashes, and the soldiers are left dodging and shielding like their equipment budget included exactly 0 plans for a water monster with momentum. Then the dragon comes in low over the armed line, which is a terrible sign for anyone standing upright. One soldier gets launched into the air while the others scatter, and the whole night battle turns into moving parts, shouting, and whatever that one stray sound effect is supposed to mean. Something on the battlefield starts generating an energy blade straight off the upper body, which is a neat trick if you enjoy violence with extra steps. The entity roars, raises a glowing symbol overhead, and then slams the whole setup down in a collision, so violent it throws up a massive blast and leaves bodies skidding everywhere. One soldier gets knocked backwards so hard the others just freeze and stare, which is fair since the position they were guarding is now basically cosmetic damage. Another one is wrestling the creature in the middle of the chaos, and the line in the dirt is gone by the time anyone realizes the fight has moved past bad and into this is a problem. The creature spits a curse at the green dragon, which is rude but also a sign this thing has opinions. Nearby, an elf stands there with a glowing weapon like he thinks dramatic posture counts as reinforcement, then starts barking a vow at the orc shaman and goblins, as if threatening them loudly will improve the math. From above, the warrior charges and swings down at the enemy line. While the spell name gets shouted like that alone will make it more lethal. He keeps chanting through the whole thing, hammering the declaration that he's wiping them out, and the goblins below are left reacting like they've just been handed a very bad prophecy in bright colors. One human soldier catches on fast and yells that the elf is about to cast a mind control spell, so of course the next instruction is just to get back and hope someone listens. Another soldier is already cursing under his breath as the mood sours even more. Then one more looks around in pure disbelief before finally losing it and firing his weapon anyway. Li Gyun's eyes lock in that flat, controlled stare, the sort that says the mind is still awake even if the body's being dragged around like cheap luggage. Above the mess, a woman with a golden headpiece and tactical gear comes into view, and she is clearly not here for anyone's comfort. She slams into the masked thing with blue energy flashing, then drives it down and pins a gun to its head like she's settling a very rude argument. Her hand stays on its body a beat too long, then her face twists when she realizes something is off, which is never a great sign when the thing under you still has a weapon. The fight explodes into close-range chaos, steel and force cracking back and forth until even the muzzle of her pistol is part of the problem. She ends up standing over it for a second, rage spilling out as she snarls that some lowly monster touched her, which is a bold complaint when the floor is already covered in violence. Then the wind spirits answer her call, and the battlefield gets to watch a literal magical entourage appear mid-brawl. One spirit declares it will linger at her fingertips and toes and annihilate their enemies, which is a fancy way of saying the next few seconds are going to be loud and expensive. Li Jun gets smashed back by the impact, then drops low with a small creature clutched protectively in his arms, so now the guy is fighting and babysitting at the same time. He checks the blood on his hand, curses it, and the creature panics over the wound while he grits through it and promises to buy time. Like that's a normal thing to say while holding a weapon with both hands, shaking just enough to matter. He surges forward anyway, weapon up, and crashes into the spirit in a straight-up bruising exchange that leaves the thing staggering. Lee Gun keeps pressing the attack until the enemy is wrecked, then stands over it, breathing hard, still holding the weapon high, and still annoyed enough to growl at the result. Before that victory can settle, another soldier dives down with a glowing blade, spiraling straight into the next collision like he missed the memo about survival. He lands braced and facing the dark shape above him, and then the whole thing turns into a hard impact full of nothing but force and bad intentions. The soldier gives ground fast, trying to keep the pale thing out of his face, but the monster just drives forward with ugly force and no interest in fair distance. Then it gets hands on the dark-haired fighter mid-clash and clamps on like this is some grim reunion nobody asked for. The fight hard cuts to a moonlit forest, which is a nice little reset until two figures are already hanging in the air with weapons drawn and zero regard for landing safely. Golden and black striped bindings flash into being, and then a goblin pops in looking personally offended by existence. He spots the goblin and freezes for half a beat, glowing object in hand, like the brain is buffering before panic fully loads. Then the goblin yells back in full recognition, and a white-haired woman blurs through the air with wind trailing off her while some guy in the shadows just watches the damage stack up. She slams into the goblin hard enough to make the whole exchange read like a bad decision in progress, while another figure crouches and picks through the broken scraps on the ground with all the dignity of a scavenger after a bar fight. The weird part is how normal that looks in this mess. A soldier stays kneeling and alert while the goblin at the edge of the frame goes full chaos mode, shouting over some tiny creature it's clutching like stolen property. Then it squeezes the thing between its hands, and human hands immediately move in to catch it before this turns into a tiny tragedy with terrible timing. The sergeant drops into a protective crouch with the creature and then pulls it tight against his chest like he's decided one small life is enough responsibility for tonight. Above that, some figures start screaming, the body warping through a red haze, and the transformation keeps going until a monster with glowing eyes is standing there, loud, huge, and deeply committed to ruining everybody's plan. Now the monster just looms over the fleeing soldiers and goblin, one foot grinding the ground while everyone else sprints across the night like speed is suddenly a prayer. Close-ups of the boot, the lower body, and those glowing eyes make the point plain. This guy is not here for subtlety. He squares off against the sergeant who keeps the creature shielded instead of backing off, which is either brave or the sort of choice that gets you flattened. The creature is still down there under the monster's shadow, and the whole thing hangs on one ugly little standoff. Then the story swerves again to a dragon resting on a grassy hillside at dusk, curled around something in its claws like it finally found a hobby. Its eyes narrow in a close-up, and after that the moonlit weirdness continues with a human standing beside glowing creature-like beings, the kind of company that does not come with an easy explanation. Dookie ends up alone in the grass, glowing like it has its own tiny agenda, and then the sergeant is literally standing on Dookie while another creature waits below. A translucent message comes through with a straight-up command to find what you like and what you want to live for, which is a wild thing to tell someone while the grass is still doing all this. Finally, Pino gets revealed in the grass, looking angry enough to bite through the frame. So now the little creatures have names, attitudes, and apparently a whole problem set of their own. Sini blurts out a confused little Sani, like even it cannot tell which weird rule applies here. Lee Jane is still in the middle of this nighttime field, standing there with two tiny creatures, and the sort of expression that says he has already accepted the situation is beyond normal, and is now just waiting to see how badly it escalates. Then the answer is not a speech, it is biology, with zero warning. The creatures split by asexual division, and the count jumps before anyone can blink. Lee Jun gathers the freshly divided little things into his arms like this is somehow a routine carry operation, which is absurd, but at least the problem is now portable. The close-up makes it clear this guy is not backing off now. Lee Gan's face hardens with that grim, determined look people get right before they do something reckless and call it duty, and then he lifts off the ground triumphantly with the creatures in tow, only to end up lying face down in his military uniform like the victory had a short fuse and a cruel sense of timing.